G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to another video, and here we go with the FIA Manufacturers series combination from just last night. As you can see straight up, Red Bull Ring in Group 3. This is actually a repeat combination from quite a while ago. I'll link the video to that up in the card above, so have a look at that after you're done with this one. But we know now the pit times have been increased, so this race is now a one-stop instead of a two-stop. But we still stick with Toyota, of course, from the last time this combination came up. We're going to go out for qualifying. And what we see, for me, in this rendition, is how important qualifying is. In fact, the race starts with qualifying. Like, you might think the race starts when lights are out. Oh, no. The race starts when you do your qualifying lap. Really, where I was sitting on the grid at the start of my race, that kind of dictated how my race was going to go, regardless of whatever pace I may have showed in practice, which was okay. My race pace was okay. But this qualifying is going to be the bane of my existence this particular time on this race, on this round of the Manufacturers series. So I started a lap in the slipstream of a Ferrari up ahead, but I ran wide and got a penalty before the lap even started. So I had to go back to the pits, and now I'm strapped for time to get 2 laps in. So we have to go out with no slipstream. We get a 27.8, which is, though it's not fantastic, but that's all I was able to get. You can see how close the grid is here. If I improved by 1/10, I'd be 7th. If I improved by 2/10, I'd be 3rd. So that's pretty crazy how close this grid is here. But as for now, let's just enjoy the Manufacturers series introduction. Lovely, as always, we meet ourselves on the grid, or we meet the 2 cars at the front of the grid on the grid. We meet me further back in the pack, having qualified. I think it's 10th. Yes, it is indeed 10th. Right, so we can discuss quite quickly the strategy of this race. It's a fairly straightforward race. It's a fairly straightforward one-stop using both the required tyres for this race, the mediums and the hards. The softs are available and we use those in qualifying, but because they're not mandated for the race, they're not really needed. But just because it's quicker to only go for a one-stop using the other 2 tyres, which are required. But because we're down the field a little bit, we're going to be starting on the harder of the 2 tyres that we have to use. So the racing hards we're going to start on. We don't want to waste our medium tyres stuck with other cars. We want to try and get some clean air and go out on the medium tyres to get a nice fast stint on the medium tyres, and that's what we're going to do. So your medium tyres can last anywhere between 14 to 18 laps even. Some cars can go 18 laps. Therefore only doing 1 lap on the hard. We're not quite going to do that. We're going to do a few laps on the hards, but we make a little bit of a mistake here and almost spin out at turn 1, and that would have been a complete disaster. But just because we got a pretty terrible run through turn 1 on that particular rendition of it there, we've got this McLaren coming right up our trumpet, and he's got slipstream heading up the straight here, and he does dart to the inside in the braking zone, so I just run wide at this corner here just to let him pass with minimal fanfare, minimal sort of flurry. I don't want any extra battling that is not needed. And you might have caught that Ace just ahead of the McLaren in the Citroen also went wide at turn 2, so now I've got the 2 cars ahead of me, the McLaren and the Citroen, sort of engaged in a little bit of a battle, and the pack ahead of me is just driving away. So unfortunately for me, I'm now stuck behind these 2 cars losing time. So I know I have to come into the pits as soon as possible to get away from these people and get out of this battle pack here. But I also have to know that I have to balance my 2 stints so I'm not sliding around on my medium tyres at the end. So I kind of have to maximize my hard stint as much as possible while also minimizing it, if that makes sense. But the McLaren runs a little bit wide at the final turn there and gets a half-second penalty, so that's alright, I guess. And then coming through turn 1, he runs wide again, and that's very close to a penalty. We'll see if he actually does manage to pick one up as we dart into the slipstream. It does increase to a second, so that is no good for the McLaren, but what that is good for is kind of my in-lap, which I've decided is now going to be lap 3, so I'm coming in at the end of this lap. I thankfully didn't really have to contend with the traffic too much on this in-lap, just because the McLaren had to serve that penalty, so that's kind of gone okay. And we're going to pit in off our hard tyres and go onto the medium tyres, and we're not going to refuel. This is a fuel-saving race, unfortunately, but the fuel save, what you have to do is not that bad. You can do about a 40% shift in the Supra and make it to the end, so it's not too bad. You don't need fuel maps or anything, so I'm happy to deal with that. Some cars may elect to not fuel save and go for the refuel in the stop, but I think with enough practice you can get your pace up there to be fast enough while fuel saving in order not to have to refuel in the pits. So that's what I've gone to do. But we've come out of the pits, unfortunately, behind these two cars. We're going to have to get past them because I was not running as quick as I knew I can. I can easily do 29.3s. It gets a little bit dodgy in that braking zone. I was quite confused as to whether I was actually going to go for that, and I looked like I was moving around in the braking zone, and I probably was, but it's all good. No other cars around me, so no worries there. But we're just going to be darting into the slipstream of the Corvette. He's going to hang behind the BMW, and I'm going to catch him napping, and I'm going to capitalise on that right there. So the Corvette was trying to take a conservative approach, perhaps wanting to get more slipstream and get the move done down into turn 4, but I was like, nope, I'm having none of that. I'm capitalising on you being submissive there, let's say, and I managed to get that move done, and that gap behind to the Corvette has opened up to 8 tenths. So the BMW ahead gets unstable on the curb on the exit of the final corner, as I've finally set a 29.3, which is the pace I need to be going at very least. So he serves that penalty, and that's the BMW dispatched and taken care of. So I've now got clear air ahead. It's just a matter of making sure the BMW doesn't re-overtake, but I think I'm faster than these cars sort of down the back of the field a little bit. Quite a large skip as we remained in 10th, just sort of gaining the positions out of people making mistakes and pitting, and we've made our way up into 9th as we reach lap 15 as cars ahead begin to do their pit stop. So a couple more cars in, but I think we equalise in 8th position here as one of the cars comes out just ahead of me, and we see coming into turn 1 the position does go up to 8th. So we're now, this is the undercut effect, so we've gone out and done a very clean, quick medium tyre stint, so we've gotten past the people that didn't pit and have been stuck in fights losing time, up into 7th on the end of lap 18, coming on to the final lap, and we'll see if there's anybody going to come out of the pit lane. The answer is no. We skip ahead to the end. We unfortunately get a penalty for running wide, but the car behind was still 1.7 seconds behind, so with that penalty rounding up to 1 second, we still finish in 7th. And we see the results there, 15 seconds off the lead. It's not really satisfactory to me at all. But have a look at that, 215 points. That's about borderline, which is what I would consider to be enough. But I wasn't satisfied with that, so we're going to go out again for another qualifying. And this qualifying, let me tell you my tale of woe.
The name be Metalbeard, and I'll tell you me tale of woe.
Oh, great, here we go again.
This qualifying was pretty much a disaster, and we'll see, well, the first lap's a write-off, 30.0, and we come across the line for our second flyer, 28.0. That's really no good at all. So we're going to come through turn 1 and see how we managed to tackle turn 1. We actually get a decent turn 1. We managed to carry 3rd gear and just keep the car in the power band of 3rd gear on the exit of turn 1. But this is, of course, the 3rd flying lap on this set of soft tyres, so the tyre wear is going to drop off. We're going to come up through this first sector split, and we're actually 0.08 of a second purple up on the purple lap, so not too bad. We get a decent turn 3 as well, getting the power down quite nicely out of that corner, but by the end of the lap we somehow lost all this time, and we only improved by 0.02 of a second, and it doesn't even improve our position. So we're less than 0.4 off the leader there, off the pole time, and we're 14th. I mean, have a look at this grid here. I'm in 14th, less than 0.4 off the lead, and in fact it's 0.5, half a second down to 18th. If I did a 27.7 dead, I'd be 4th. It's ridiculous. how close this grid was. I was only less than half a second off the leader, and I'm down near the back of the grid. It's a real big ouch for this race, because the points on offer for this race, I needed a third position to be satisfied. So that's quite a tall order, but we'll see how we manage to go. We're going to start on the hard tyres again. So we're going to go for this massive undercut, and, you know, pending traffic, we'll see what particular lap is our in lap, but we get a little bit squirrely out of the final corner because of this stupid rolling start that puts half the cars on a corner, so it's really hard to get going, but it's all good. At least it gives us a little bit of a gap to get a clean first lap in as the Subaru runs very wide. We'll see if he manages to get a penalty for that. You can almost avoid a penalty at turn 1 if you go off track in a certain way. Like if you're sliding and you go off the track, you can just avoid a penalty. Now I think that's exactly what's happened to the Subaru, because he clearly went beyond the yellow sausage curb and did not pick up a penalty. He runs wide at turn 3, and I capitalise on that move. A little bit of contact as he was coming across my exit apex, but it's all good. We have gotten ahead of this coffee fella, and by the end of the lap we've got 2 cars sort of squabbling over to the right hand side. Not quite sure what was going on here, but then the Beetle brakes very early and pulls off to the right, and he's going in for the very early pit stop, only doing 1 lap on the hard tyres. That's okay, not to worry. We will have to worry about an undercut from those cars a little bit later, so that was Hyper LS. We'll see how that works out for him. But I've now got this Subaru that I overtook at the opening of the lap very, very close behind, and we'll see how racy he actually is as he bumps us through turn 1, but I don't go wide, so I was probably not carrying the speed there, so I'm still not got the confidence on these hard tyres. So it's all good, a bump from behind, but no, it's all status quo, it's all good. Turn 3, we get another bump from behind from the Subaru, so I'm starting to think at this point, are you on a soft compounded tyre, because you're bumping me through every single corner, and he continues to do so here. Another bump, and that sort of disrupts me a little bit. I wasn't quite able to get onto 100% throttle as quickly as I normally would without a bump there. We're coming into the final 2 corners now, so coming into turn 9, we do run wide here, but we get a bump just as we're getting on the power, and it sends us wide beyond track limits. We get another bump out of the final corner, so that's 2 bumps. We've been put beyond track limits there, and I was starting to get frustrated as I now pick up a penalty for running wide. I definitely felt as though I could keep that within track limits minus the bumps, but yeah, the Subaru, I don't know what's going on there as he pulls out as I get a poor turn 1, and I do a little naughty something there. I give him a little bit of a tap in the side just to express my frustration that I've now got to serve this penalty because I was pushed wide at the final 2 corners. I wasn't trying to wipe him out, I wasn't trying to do that. I was just the equivalent of like slapping a handkerchief in someone's face. Just be like, what are you doing? Be gone with you. And we are indeed going to be gone with him, but unfortunately in the wrong direction. We're going to be gone with him from ahead. But that at least stretched the gap out ahead, so I was able to extend my hard tyre stint out to 4 laps. So that reduces my medium stint by 1, so I can reduce a very worn medium tyre lap, because that stint is a little bit shorter than my last race. We come out of the pits now, and we'll see if we come out in any traffic. We do have a car behind Day Armour, 1123, however he's 1.2 seconds back. I'm not quite sure that's close enough in order for him to be a hassle at the start of this lap here, but it's going to be crucial that we get a good exit out of turn 2 because we've got the cold tyres, so we're not going to have the grip under us that car behind me is going to have, so it's just going to be pivotal that we don't put him within slipstream, and we don't do that indeed, so that's lovely there. We do have clean air for a little while as well. We don't have any cars directly in front of us except for this Nissan, which we catch up to within within 1 lap, just about 1 lap. We get that move completely done at turn 3, straight up the inside, and the Subaru has followed me through, so that's Day Armour. He actually has caught up to me as I've caught up to the back of the Nissan, and we've got this Alfa Romeo ahead serving a penalty, but the Subaru's looking racy down into turn 4. He sends it down the inside, the Nissan's looking around the outside. I've got a bit of a pincer movement there, but they both run deep, and I undercut them or switch them back on the exit, and I still managed to keep that position for 14th, and I now have this Alfa Romeo ahead of me. He's going to be good through the corners, but he has run a little bit wide through turn 6, and that's put him within slipstream range to me, so this is going to help sort of recover this lap and make this lap a good one off the back of being stuck in a little bit of a fight with the 2 cars behind. But that Alfa Romeo is pretty crap in a straight line, so as long as we get a decent turn 1, which we're going to try and do here, out gently in second gear and get the power down on the exit. We're half a second behind. It's quite a fair way back to go for the move, but he's helped me by getting half a second penalty on the exit of turn 1. He's going to serve that. He pulls well off the racing line. Fair play to him. And we've got that move done up into 13th. We've now got oodles of clean air, a load of clean air ahead of us, no cars ahead of us for the next 4 seconds. However, the car ahead is Hyper, so he's done a very, very big undercut on me while I've done my extra hard stint and, you know, that little bit of a fight. Quite a large skip. That was really nothing in this particular race that was really noteworthy of being in the video. It was literally just like 10-12 laps of me circulating, trying to go as quick as possible while fuel saving, setting some low 29s there. It's decent race pace for me at least, and we capitalise on this Ferrari who's come out of the pits just ahead of me, but he will be on the hard tyre as we're in the closing stages of the race. So I capitalised while he had the very worn hard tyres, and that has paid dividends for me as we're still in the clean air. We undercut a couple of people in the pits, but we skip ahead to this, and now this was really stupid. Have a look at this. Have a look at what happens to me as we exit turn 7 here onto the turn 8 curb, which is a very buggy curb, but look at what happens, you know, completely straight, and we just lose control on the curb. So that's the curb glitch. Half-second penalty for what? For what? Half-second penalty for what? Are you joking me? So I've now got to serve a half-second penalty that I got because, you know, the game glitched out on us. We glitched or clipped into the curb or whatever happened there. The car got thrown up into the air and it registered as a corner cut because I was thrown onto the inside grass. So I understand how that penalty was awarded, but, you know, it's still stupid how we still got it anyway, and then the Ferrari capitalises on me serving my penalty. A little bit of a strong move, but I think it's just about permissible given that we're coming up to the end of the race. We've only got 2 laps to go at the end of this one. So as long as we get a good exit out of turn 1, which I don't think we do, we've run deep and we've run beyond the track limits, but we get back within track limits before going on to 100% throttle, and I think that saved us from a penalty, as by the end of the race that gap remained the same at about 8 tenths. But there we go, we finish up in 8th, so the undercut has worked again. We've gained a whole load of positions, in fact more positions than last time. We started in 10th and finished 7th last time. We started in 14th and finished 8th this time. So the undercut has worked, but unfortunately again, my starting position has just absolutely ruined this race. I can do a 20-minute 50 race time, and I did 2 of them in fact in practice. So I've going to be aiming to try and get somewhere close to that, but I've now got to go for 3rd slot. So this is the 3rd race of this video, and we'll see how this one manages to turn itself out. But what I'm looking for here is I'm going to try and get a slipstream in qualifying, and I saw behind GT Mag is behind in that Jaguar, and he's slightly quicker than me, or he's demonstrated on occasion that he's slightly quicker than me, so I want to get his slipstream. So what I'm trying to do now is slow down enough so that he overtakes me, but I don't think he's taken the bait. I think he knows he wants slipstream too, and he's looking at me thinking, oh yeah, that smokescreen guy can be fast. Don't know why he'd think that, but he's not overtaking me no matter how slow I go, so I'm starting to get frustrated at this point, so I know I have to go, and this Nissan is coming through, which is good in a straight line, so I'm going to try and accelerate as he passes me here. So I'm all good and dandy, and then he brakes, and I kind of, you know, there's a little bit of indecision. Do I stick behind the Nissan, but then the Jaguar will get my slipstream, so I think, oh, do I go or do I not? And then I end up not going, and then now I'm basically stopped on the last 2 corners with GT Mag refusing to overtake. That's not his fault, but, you know, it's just frustrating. I really wanted a slipstream because this is the 3rd race now, and my qualifying has been disastrous in this evening, and unfortunately I'm now got to make sure I get 2 laps in at least, so it's a little bit difficult. I did end up going, but that lap was a complete disaster start to finish in a 28.7. But finally, we have a clean flying lap of Red Bull Ring in Group 3, and we still have GT Mag in our slipstream, but he makes a mistake on the exit of turn 1, so I don't have to worry too much about the slipstream effects onto GT Mag, especially because he's either quit his lap because there's no one behind me. But look at that, a 10th up in the 1st sector, so we just got to try and get a decent exit out of turn 2, trying to get the power down. The Supra is so awkward out of turn 3, just because second gear bogs way too much, and then first gear there's way too much wheel spin. So, you know, you got to choose first gear, but then you've got to really control your throttle on the exit. It's so difficult, and this car kind of, I think it's a very good car for this track, but some of these slower corners are just so awkward, and then the curbs all around this track are just terrible. You've got curb glitches everywhere. You know, we saw the one in the previous race, and there's also a couple in the last sector. We come across that sector split, and we're half a second up on the session best, so that's all good at this point. So we are looking to improve. I mean, a 28.7 should be pretty easy to improve upon indeed, but then we're going to make sure we get a good couple of corners at the end of the lap. Fourth gear through the second to last corner down to third, and try and clatter that inside curb. We don't quite cut the curb as much as we can, but it's still a decent exit as we come out of the final corner and across the line at 27.8, 9 tenths up on our last lap there. That's still not quite what I was looking for, but we are in third position, and by the end of the session we only got overtaken by one person. How lucky is that? I mean, you might have just seen briefly I was about 3 tenths off the pole time, and I was 4 tenths off the pole time in the last split, or in the last slot, and I was 14th, so I'm 3 tenths off here and I'm 4th. So that's really just a stroke of luck, a massive stroke of luck. I just happened, in this lobby, everyone just sort of happened to not get the cleanest lap in, and I just so happened to be near the front of the grid with a 27.8 or something. But at least we're up the front this time, so we're just going to be making sure we try and stay here for the majority of this race, in fact all of this race. So as long as we don't crash, as long as we get a nice clean race, we should be able to hang up the front. So I'm looking to make these moves on the cars ahead of me pretty much as quick as possible, because I'm a clean air master. I do a lot of my good racing in the clean air. So it's very important to me that I actually get past these cars ahead as quick as possible, because I don't want to be stuck behind. I just need to be in clean air to do my thing. And we're looking to get this move done on the Nissan. We got the move done on the BMW very quickly at the start of the race, but we're now looking to get this move done on the Nissan. And I'm not sure whether it's started on mediums or hards, because he's quite slow at the start of the race. We're looking to head down the inside at turn 9, and he actually completely backs out of that one. He attempts to go for the switchback, but I stop it on the apex just soon enough, and he's not able to sort of return that move. So I'm successfully up into second. I've gained 2 positions on the opening lap, and I've now got my sights firmly set on the leader. So that's very good for this race, but the next issue now is the slipstream, so I have to make sure I get a decent turn 1, and taking that extra wide entry on the curb, I've just about managed to open that gap up to about half a second on the exit, but he gets superior grip and he's gained a 10th, and he does have the slipstream up to the top of the hill, the Nissan does behind, but I've just got to make sure that he's not close enough to go for the dive down the inside, so I'm braking as late as possible, and I managed to get it pulled up and just meet that apex, and we get on the power nice and smoothly, and we cast our eyes up to that gap, and it's opened up to 7 tenths, almost 7 tenths, so we're getting the job done against this Nissan behind. The important thing is to break the slipstream, because he can also fuel save in slipstream, which will reduce his chance of refueling at the stop. But on the exit of turn 4, the gap has opened up to 8 tenths of a second, and we've successfully broken the slipstream. But this was the situation for pretty much the whole of the first stint, but we're going to just see how we go. We're going to meet ourselves on lap 5. So we set a 29.1 in race while fuel saving. That's actually a decent lap, to be fair, on a full fuel load, or relatively full fuel load. While fuel saving, a 29.1 isn't a bad lap at all. Leader runs wide at turn 1, so that throws me a little bit of a lifeline. I know that but just because through this first stint he's only extended the gap by 1.5 seconds, and by the end of lap 1 he was about 1.2 seconds ahead, so I'm pretty sure that if I got within his slipstream I could probably stay with him and probably overtake him towards the end of the race. So the fact that he's now going to serve this penalty just gives me an opportunity to get back within the slipstream range, which should help, you know, my case for this race. But I do have to be very careful not to get stuck and get engaged in a battle with this guy, but because that will just invite cars behind to sort of catch us up and sort of get in the mix, which will reduce my chances of getting a good position, a good result at the end. So I do have to sort of balance what I do, but that penalty has only closed that Jaguar and brought that Jaguar closer to me by or up to about half a second, so I'm not close enough for him to really be impacting the way I drive. He's not really close enough for him to be causing me to make mistakes. So it's all good at this stage, and the gap to the Nissan has opened up to 1.5 seconds. So now that I have Slipstream, it's only going to be assisting me down these straights, which will help open that gap up to the Nissan. That Nissan's very good in a straight line, but I think against a Supra that has Slipstream, it's not quite up to the battle, up to the task. But as we head through turn 1, we're going to be looking to get a decent exit, but unfortunately that Jaguar just has superior grip. That's the thing with the Supra. Traction is not its strong point. That's in fact probably a very big weakness of the car, and that gap has opened up to over the Slipstream range, so I'm going to be looking to get a very good turn 3, and that should hopefully put me within the Slipstreams. The Jaguar runs wide through turn 3, gives me a little look in there, but unfortunately again, the traction out of turn 3 is pretty terrible in fact, and that gap has opened up beyond the Slipstream. We meet ourselves a little bit later in the race because it's all just status quo. There's nothing to show. We've run slightly wide through turn 7, and you might have heard the gravel noise, and you are correct. I did indeed just slightly graze the gravel, and that is not good because I've now got myself a half-second penalty, and with the Nissan being able to stay just close enough behind, he's still only 1.5 seconds behind, he's ready and raring to sort of capitalise on any mistakes I may make, and that's exactly what's happened to me on this race here, because on the exit of turn 4, oh man, that was so close to the Nissan getting within Slipstream range, so I was kind of bricking it at this point, just waiting for him to get within Slipstream, and through turn 5, or is that, yeah, that's turn 6, sorry, through turn 6 he got within Slipstream momentarily, but on the exit it's opened up to 8 tenths, and then through turn 7 and 8 as we head out onto that turn 8 curve, that gap is closing in. It's going to be very close to the Slipstream range by the time we get up to turn 9, into the brakes, into the second to last corner. Having a look at that gap, he's within Slipstream range only momentarily. We get the better exit and manage to just open up that gap again, but on the exit of the final corner he gets the much better exit. He must have cut that corner beautifully and got the grip out the exit, because he's now under half a second behind. That is very much so within Slipstream range, with the very good straight line speed of that Nissan, plus the Slipstream up to the top of the hill. I'm going to be very concerned about a move, but he makes a mistake through turn 1. The gap has opened up to beyond the Slipstream range, so that was very, very close to me losing the second position. And I was really scared of losing this second position and then not being able to lap as quick as I possibly can, which I'm honestly not really doing at the moment, because I'm only doing 29.5s and 29.7s. I really need to be doing 29.3s, but it's not quite slow enough to be sort of falling within the clutches of the car behind. But we skip ahead to lap 15. This is finally we get to the pit stop phases, so this race there's not really much action in this race, but it's all good. I can at least still show what happened. The leader pits in at the end of lap 15, so I was thinking about going on the end of lap 15, but I thought I could do an extra lap on the medium, and I mean, well, we'll see how that works out for me. As we continue on, we're going to be just showing a lap here to see exactly what we do, because remember we do have to fuel save, and in fact fuel in this race was kind of a little bit of a anxiety-inducing affair for me, because if we have a look down at the laps remaining, there's 3.5 laps remaining, and I would argue we're still not halfway through this lap, and in fact that's dipped down to 3.4. I would ideally probably like to be going into turn 6 with 3.4 laps remaining, but I'm still not even up to the braking zone for turn 4, so I've still got 2 corners to go, and that laps remaining is dipped to 3.3. So what we've got to do is we've got to be absolutely vigilant in ensuring that we only shift at 40% or less along the rev bar along the bottom. The Supra has okay low end grunt, but don't short shift it too much, because it will begin to bog, and just because you short shift the Supra, you actually shift it closer and closer to the point where it does begin to bog, so we do have to be very careful. But coming out towards the second to last corner, the laps remaining 3.0, so I've still got a couple of corners worth of fuel to save up for the rest of the race with only 3 laps to go. But this is our in lap, so this is the final lap on the medium stint. We get a nice pit entry actually, and we don't clatter any barriers. I'm just going to make sure we select the right tyre and no refueling. Once again, my man on the fuel canister is once again showed up at the Red Bull ring, all for nothing, just to stand there and watch my car only get tyres changed. Poor fuel canister holder in the pit lane. He probably could have watched this one from the... he Could have watched this one from the hotel room. But it's all good. We come out of the pits. There's a car between myself and the leader. So it will be interesting to see that gap to the leader. As you might have seen, that gap as we went into the pit to the leader was, or as the leader pitted in front of us, I guess, was 3.6. So that was the gap to myself and Bo93, who we've now been split by BMW yet to pit. But once that BMW does pit, we will be able to see the gap to the leader, or the gap to Bo. The BMW pits in there, the end of lap 17, and we are finally going to be able to see that gap between myself and Bo, and that gap is closed down to 2.1, so we made a gain pitting a lap later, and in fact, if we were slightly closer to him, we might have been able to come out of the pits ahead of him, but unfortunately for us, it's not quite happened, so we've just got to make sure that we can remain just cleanly lapping on our hard tyres now. We do have two cars up ahead. They have been yet to pit, so once they do pit, which they do at the end of lap 18, they've done a very long medium tyre stint, but they pitted out of the lead. They've released Bo and released me into first and second, coming onto the final lap, and we've got a 1.8 gap behind. So on the final lap, we cast our eyes down to the fuel, and we've managed to save up 1.0 laps of fuel, but we've been doing very, very aggressive short shifts, so we've got to make sure we continue that. But I know I can be sort of a little bit more, a little bit more revvy than I was when I was trying to save fuel, because I now don't have any additional laps to save fuel for, so I can use all of this fuel. So I've just got to make sure I keep an eye on laps remaining, and just make sure, I don't really exceed the fuel use that I can afford. The percentage has dipped down to 3%, so I've got most of the lap to go with only 3% of the fuel left, so we are cutting it quite fine. But we continue to short shift, we continue to use less fuel than the game thinks we need, so I know that it's okay. We're half a lap remaining coming into turn 6, not too bad. We are done with the power sectors of the circuit too, so fuel use from here on out is going to be less significant than the first half of the race, and the first half of the lap, sorry, because we've got all those straight lines at the start of the lap. Coming out of turn 8, 0.4 laps remaining. I think we're looking good for fuel at the moment, because I would argue we've probably only got 0.2 of a lap remaining, 0.3 laps remaining with 1% of the fuel. I'm now looking at the percentage of fuel, because we can afford for it to dip to 0% before we actually do run out. We've got to work our way through the 0%, but out of the final corner we've still got 1% of the fuel. It's no worries. We got to the end in second position, 2.2 seconds off the leader, and he in fact set a 28.53, and I did 2 seconds up from that, so I did a 28.55 with a penalty. Still not quite up to the level of pace I really wanted. I knew I could do a 28.50, but you'll see the points I get. I'm not going again for the sake of a 5 second slower race times. We get 273 points. That's got to be one of my biggest point hauls. And it really just goes to show, like, that particular lobby, the qualifying was not that quick, to be completely honest with you. Even for me, I should have been doing 27.5s, 27.6s in qualifying, but I only got a 0.8. So it just goes to show you don't need to be the quickest to get good points hauls, and I think that is a little bit of a problem with this game. You can be way up in top split and finishing 15th in top split and get like less than 200 points. It's a little bit weird how all that works, but I won't get into that too much. What we will get into is the fact that I got 273 points, which is an absolutely beautiful result for me, and a podium, second step on the podium. I will take that any day of the week, but I will try and wrap this video up quickly. It's been quite a long one, having to fit 3 FIA races within one video. It was quite the editing mountain to try and achieve, but I think I've just about managed to do it. And if you have indeed made it to the end, I do sincerely congratulate you and thank you for your sustained engagement as you watched this entertainment phenomenon. Might be a little bit dramatic, but nevertheless, if you did enjoy this video, do hit the like button and do subscribe. If you'd like to see more videos from me, do leave a comment as well, as questions, comments and constructive criticism, as always, are very much appreciated. But that's going to be the end of this one today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.